Oklahoma, where the wind comes sweeping down the plains. All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome back to True Crime Loser. How you doing today? That sounds awesome. So today we are going to talk about Daniel Holtzclaw. And Holtzclaw is probably the most requested topic for me to talk about. And usually when people request a topic, it takes on a pretty friendly tone. Like, hey, check out this. I think you would think it was interesting. Or, hey, I think you could get an episode about this. Love the show. But the Holtzclaw, and a lot of the Holtzclaw ones are nice too, but a portion of the Holtzclaw requests are like, do Holtzclaw, pussy. It's like, what? That took a bit of a turn. Or it's like, what, are you scared to do Holtzclaw? And I think what they're talking about of why, I don't know, I think it says more about that they're scared or something to talk about it. But I think what they're talking about is that since a large portion of people think that he's innocent, we'll get through the story, but a large portion of the people thinks he's innocent, so therefore that it's scary. I don't know. But the reason that I haven't talked about it yet is, like, if you were to ask me or to tell me when I started this channel that I would be a year in without talking about Holtzclaw, I would be like, yeah, right, you're crazy. Of course I have to talk about it. And then, so I was working my way through the ones that I was pretty fascinated by. We did Underwear Russ and Troll Hair Stiven and Crazy Face Lazarus. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to do Dylan McFetridge, the infamous To Catch a Predator guy. I'm just being honest. And thinking like, all right, this is going to be fun again, and I hit like a sexual wall with that one. I had no idea that I just did not enjoy. It's one thing to listen to one of these highly sexual cases, sex crimes. It's one thing to listen to the interrogation alone, just sitting there by yourself, but to go through it and then to get on and summarize the whole thing in front of thousands of people, all of a sudden was not enjoyable for me. And I didn't think that was going to happen. So all of a sudden I'm doing the Dustin one, and I didn't enjoy doing the work, and I didn't enjoy doing the episodes, and I thought the episodes were pretty lousy, and I just left a bunch of stuff out. Like, people were like, you left out the part where he described his penis. And I'm like, yeah, man, I don't know. Sorry. I didn't feel like doing that part. And so after that, I was like, all right, I am done with the sex crimes ones. That was a rough getting through the Dustin one. And so all of a sudden, Holtzclaw was kind of put on the back burner. And a lot of the charges that he was convicted of are forced oral sodomy. And so every time I was like, maybe I should do Holtzclaw, I'd sit down and watch a little bit of the interrogation and just be like, I don't really feel like signing up to talk about forced oral sodomy in the morning for a week. It just never sounded good. I never thought, like, you know what? Tomorrow morning, I feel like talking about it. And so I think when people are like, what, are you scared? It's like, no, I don't want to talk about forced oral sodomy in the morning for a week. That's my new show. Just, hey, welcome back to Forced Oral Sodomy in the Morning with Scott Sharp. Maybe that could be my podcast. So but I don't know. I was watching it the other day, and let's do it. This is a bizarre case. So was a victim that I think her charges were totally thrown out, but just to start of how bizarre this case was, someone testified during the case while on PCP, and that turns out to be one of the more normal things about this case. So let's get into it. The backstory. Daniel Holtzclaw grew up in Oklahoma, huge football state. If you're a young, good football player in Oklahoma, you're a celebrity. And that's what Daniel was. He's this big, strong, great football player, athletic. The position he played is the guy that whoever has the ball on the other team, he runs as fast as they can and tries to slam them and mush them into the ground and tackle them in a way that'll make the whole stadium go, yeah! And Holtzclaw was really good at it. He was one of the best in high school, then he went to college and was one of the best in college. And everybody thought he might even go pro. And the chances of being good enough to go pro in sports are so small. It's being an athlete is tough because the end comes like a brick wall. If you're a guitar player, there's no real ending to trying to be a guitar player where it's all of a sudden it's like someone tells you, sorry, you don't get to play anymore. Everyone else is better than you that gets to keep playing, and, sorry. And so he was really good in college. It looked like he was going to achieve his dream of playing professional football. The big draft day comes where it's like an all-day event where each team gets up and goes, we would like to draft Schmida for our quarterback. And it takes forever. And they're sitting there in the Holtzclaw house. There's a journalist there that had covered him in college. He's sitting there, and team after team calls who they want, and they don't call Holtzclaw, which it's got to be tough. And so instead, the dream of playing football didn't work out. But hey, we all got dreams that are dead. It's just part of growing up, and, there's some people, I guess, that just everything in life is a win and they just accomplish everything. But most of us take some L's along the way. And that's all right. And so he, instead of becoming a pro football player, followed the steps of his mother and father and became a police officer. And in the first couple years of being a police officer, he had 19 use of force allegations or violations or whatever it is, where people that were either arrested by him or dealt with him out there as a police officer said he was just way too rough. And that makes sense to me. Think his whole childhood, his whole talent in life is to use his muscles to run after someone and to tackle them, in spectacular fashion to the ground. So think like he's wished he could have played football. He's a police officer instead. He's sitting there. You're arresting a little crackhead or something, and then the crackhead takes off. And all of a sudden, his old instincts come in, and his muscles are pulsing, and he's like, yeah! And he runs after, and he tackles the crackhead, and, but it's like, Daniel, whoa, he's just a little crackhead. You can't, we're not playing football anymore. It's too rough. You're going to hurt somebody. You're not a football player anymore. As soon as you can't play football anymore, tackling someone like that isn't legal, which is probably pretty tough if it's your favorite thing in the world to run as fast as you can and run into someone and bring them down. All of a sudden, if you can never do that again because it's illegal and it's going to hurt somebody. So he got 19 use of force. And they were all cleared because it's just, the board to go over that stuff is just where he works. So they're all cleared. But that to me is a sign. It doesn't, I don't think, mean anything as far as what happens later, why he's now having a nice 263-year sentence. But I think that it shows, he missed some of what he got out of sports. And so, I think it was June 18th, 2014, at 2 a.m. in the morning, he gets off of work, right? And on the way, he's driving home in his police cruiser. He turns off all of his computer, all the gear that he has, turns it all off, which is against policy, but doesn't seem to be, too bad of a infraction or something. So he turns all that off. And as he's driving home, like I said, it's 2 a.m. He sees a red car with tinted windows swerve and go over the line. And without his computer and the radio and essentially every single safety precaution and system that is put in place to protect Holtzclaw when he's doing traffic tickets, without any of that, because it's all off, he pulls over this red car with tinted windows. And one of the other reasons why I haven't talked about Holtzclaw yet is I have a friend that, or a friend of a friend that was an NYPD police officer for 20 years. He hated it. I didn't even know he was a police officer. Our mutual friend, it just like came up. He's like, yeah, he used to be a cop. And the guy looks young. He hasn't aged at all. And I was like, what do you mean he used to be a cop? How? I thought he was our age. And he's like, no, he did a whole career, 20-year career as a cop, hated it, got quit with the little pension, and now does something else. And so I always wanted to ask him about this stop, because whether you think Holtzclaw is guilty or innocent, it's hard to argue that this stop wasn't the biggest mistake of his whole life. You know, like his family, who thinks he's innocent, says, he got railroaded. You hear that word, he got railroaded. Or, this could happen to anyone, saying he was falsely accused. This could happen to anybody. And it's like, I don't know if you can use the word railroaded, because he went in without any of all of the safety measures and systems that they put in place to protect him. He didn't have them on, and he pulled this car over at 2 a.m. And so this stop is just fascinating to me. And so finally I was in the same place a couple weeks ago as this guy that used to, an ex-cop. And I said, have you ever heard of Daniel Holtzclaw? And he said, no. And I said, okay, so let me ask you a question. In your experience as a police officer, you get off work at 2 a.m. You turn all your gear and everything off. While you're driving home with all your gear off, you see a car swerve. You pull that over, and without turning any of your stuff back on or calling it in, and when I got to that part, he started making this face. Like already he had a visceral reaction to the thought of pulling a car over at 2 a.m. without any of your gear going. And he was, so we talk about it, and he was saying that he was always extremely ready to be done with work, just like everybody. When you're done, all you want to do is get home, take a shower, eat something, and not think about what you just did. And so he was saying that if it was just a little swerve, he probably wouldn't have done anything. If it was a really bad swerve, say the car like went up on the curb and hit a fire hydrant, or just something where he could not with a clear conscience drive away because the person seemed so drunk. And so he said what he would have done is immediately called someone else that was working and be like, hey, I turned all my stuff off. This car swerved like you wouldn't believe. I had to pull it over. I'm sitting here behind it with my lights on, but you got to come out and take over. I'm not going to do a whole 2-hour DUI arrest and everything. I just got off work. It's 2 a.m. I would have to, So that's what he was saying that he would have done in that situation. But he also said if just a little swerve at 2 a.m., he probably would have just said, hey, I'm essentially just I'm off duty. So I'm similar to that person, just a citizen driving. But what happened is, so Holtzclaw pulls over this woman who I think was 57 years old, middle-aged woman, and She admits to having pills pretty quickly into the stop. He asks to search her car. He brings her back to his car and puts her in his car for a while. And the whole thing takes 15 minutes, which seems pretty long. There was no ticket given or anything. And so he, searched her car, puts her back in his car, and they both said that she was crying hysterically while there. So he had her in his car and they're talking and he's asking her, hey, you got to get a license. I think she had a suspended license, and you got to, why are you swerving? And she's bawling hysterically. And they both said this. So I'm going to go over the information that they both said that matched. And so you got to think that at least that part is true. So she's bawling in the back of his police car. And it's tough for me to, it's explained by the people that think he's innocent. It's explained away as just, hey, he's a good cop and he wanted to check and make sure she wasn't drunk. He didn't arrest her or anything. It wasn't good that he turned his stuff off, but it's just a little bad habit. It's the stop is explained away pretty quickly and easily. Like, yep, nothing to see here. He just is good at his job. All right, let's get on to other stuff. But it's hard for me to get past this stop, picturing at 2 a.m, he had already found pills, or he already knew she had pills and didn't have a license minutes and minutes before. And so if you know you're not going to arrest her, and you know that you're not going to cite her, why are you just jerking her around in your car for 10 minutes? Or for 10, 15 minutes. I enjoy living in a country where an off-duty police officer can't pull me over and just fuck me around for 15 minutes. If I broke the law and you're going to take me to jail or you're going to write me a citation, do it. But I'm not going to I don't want to sit in the back of your car while you're off work and have a therapy session with you. It's weird. Some middle-aged woman is sitting in your car bawling. Daniel keeps saying, I'm so tired. All I wanted to do is go home. And it's like, you could have gone home. Go home. If you're not going to, I think he could have decided a lot quicker if he was going to arrest her, or this needed to be a thing. You need to call someone that is on duty, or if you're just going to let her go and tell her, hey, get the license fixed, drive safer, you did swerve, and let her go. But the time is hard for me to, you're just, we live in a free society where you don't have to sit there and with an off-duty police officer and talk to him, is the way I feel about it. And so there's really grainy, horrible security camera footage of the stop. It doesn't show anything other than the stop was made. So 2 cars, lights, you have no idea, can't see anything. And so after 15 minutes, Holtzclaw cut her loose. He said, go straight home, get your license fixed. And he followed her for a little bit and then got annoyed that she was going slow. And they went their separate ways. Well, she then went to the police station and made really scary sexual allegations against Holtzclaw. Said that he brought her back to the car and made her lift up her shirt, and she pulled down her pants at one point, and then while she was sitting on the seat, he forced her to go down on him for 10 seconds, the whole forced oral sodomy. And so she comes into the sex crime unit and it does all these allegations. Well, they look up the stop and it's not in the books. Every traffic stop is called in. You touch base with whoever the base person is. And there's a whole procedure. So I think for the sex crimes workers right there, that was extremely suspicious. This middle-aged woman comes in, she didn't get out of a ticket. That, the motive has to be that you're trying to either take down a cop's career or to take down a cop's career and then to sue for money, because there was no motive for getting out of the ticket or getting out of jail or anything like that. And so she makes these very, very life-ruining allegations against Holtzclaw. And and the next day, when Holtzclaw gets into work, he gets in the hot seat. They interrogate him. And like I said, the interrogation is pretty graphic because the whole thing deals with these allegations. But next time we will get into it. And, oh yeah, one more thing that I wanted to talk about with this one is pretty much any time a case gets politicized, it just bizarre things happen. And this case got highly politicized. And so, what was his name? Michael Brown. There was a man named Michael Brown like a week or two before this, or maybe it was a month or two, but pretty right before this, a guy named Michael Brown was shot and killed by a police officer. And there were some bad ones here in the United States. Like the police officer that shot that guy as he ran away, and then he didn't know anyone was filming, and he went up and he threw his taser next to the guy that was laying there dying, and then he was like, yeah, I shot him, he stole my taser. Like, that case, there needs to be like a parade or protest or something, because I think anyone that saw that was like, oh man, that guy murdered that guy and then was gonna try to, weasel his way out of it. But this Michael Brown one, there isn't any footage of him being killed by the police officer, but minutes or, a small time before that, there's footage of him robbing a convenience store where there's this like little Indian guy that owns the store, and Michael Brown's this huge guy, and Michael Brown just comes in with this like big intimidating attitude and like grabs a box of Swisher Sweet cigars, and the little Indian guy that owns the store goes up, this is all on camera, goes up to him and like, hey, you can't do that, and the big guy kind of just uses his size and just get the fuck out of here. And as he's leaving, the Indian guy like says something again, and Michael Brown turns around and like big, he's like 2 feet taller than this Indian guy, like walks towards him. And so I don't think that you should be shot for robbing a convenience store, or, I don't think that that's a death sentence by any means, or a police officer gets to, do anything because of that. But it's hard not to watch that case where he's just stealing and intimidating, and it's pretty hard to be on his side. And it's also hard, it's like, all right, well, if you're walking around in life stealing people's stuff and robbing businesses and intimidating, and something bad is going to happen. This is America. At some point someone is going to defend themselves. And so after he robs the convenience store, he goes and gets into it with a cop and ends up getting shot. And it turns into a huge, the Black Lives Matter, the people that are against police across the board, which is just pretty stupid. And South Park handled that topic really well. It's like, all right, be against a bad cop, or if a cop does something bad, be against it. But just to be across the board against police is pretty stupid, because if someone starts banging your door down with an axe, the first thing you're going to do, or if your stuff gets stolen, you're going to call the police and beg them for help. So being totally against cops across the board, I think, is a pretty stupid way to go through life. And being totally pro cops across the board, no matter what, is equally stupid. And so the Black Lives Matter people with this Michael Brown one, go full on and then are hungry and are searching for another case or, that fits their narrative. And then this Holtzclaw one happens and they latch onto that as far as, but I don't know if it totally fits the narrative of some of them. But anyway, my point is it got highly politicized. And when that happens, usually, once it's politicized, just like politics, usually you get about 50% of people that think one thing happened and 50% other, and you can pretty much just hear someone's opinion about the case and know their politics. The Amber Geiner case was pretty much similar. I would talk to someone about it, and with their opinion, you could pretty much guess that their politics. And the bummer part about when it gets politicized is truth. It's harder to find truth when no one's looking for it, when everyone just wants it to fit in the narrative that fits their political agenda. And the shit pretty much hits the fan. So anyway, the woman that was pulled over on an off-the-books traffic stop came in, made all these allegations, and the next day when Holtzclaw comes in, they interrogate him, and he's in the hot seat. And we'll talk about that next time. I hope you're having a good day. Why? Diving why? Last question.